Are you planning for long term, whether that's related to your business, investments, lifestyle, the challenges you're dealing with? Do you get too focused on short term little challenges, or are you trying to solve bigger problems here? They sit there and they wake up, is like, what the hell am I supposed to do today?
Yeah.
What do I need to deal with right now? That's not how you build a business. That's not how you build a life.
Every minute of every day has a job. It has a purpose.
What is the uncomfortable thing you need to do as a coach daily? Not just once a week or once a month, but daily. And that's what moves your business forward.
What's up, Coaches Nation? This is Dr. Sherry with another episode of the Coach's Journey podcast. And I'm here with my amazing co-host, Faisal Ansan. And we have a really important topic discussion that we're going to have today around how to have the best time management as a coach. If you're a full-time coach, you recognize the challenges of trying to move things forward and serve your clients, and they work on your business as well as you're working in your business, all of the things. And it's really hard to juggle. It can be really hard to juggle. If you're a part-time coach or one that's kind of still in a job that you're trying to transition out of, whatever that looks like for you, you're also going to experience the pain around how do I juggle trying to build a coaching practice and trying to get that established while I'm also still doing another job or another career. So no matter what your position in this, I think this is going to be a really important topic for every single coach.
One of the things that I've learned is whether you're part-time or full-time, you'll have things to take care of. It's not just your business. I mean, our lives are multidimensional. I mean, it's rare that I meet somebody whose focus is just work. We have families, we have kids, we have other responsibilities, we have all sorts of challenges that happen. So how you manage your time and where you get the most amount of what do they call it? The bang for the buck? Or is it the
Yes.
buck for the bank? Am I getting this?
Bang for your buck.
Bang for your buck. Fourth language. Yes. I blame it on that, no matter what I say wrong.
Absolutely.
But yeah, let's dive in and really figure out what it takes to actually build a business and sustain that business, but what it takes to actually create a lifestyle that matters to you while you're doing this and serving people at the highest level. That is a question that we're trying to answer, and we'd love to hear from you too. As you're listening to this, please share your thoughts, ideas, perspectives with us, whether you're listening to this live or afterwards. We'd love to know from you too.
Perfect. So there's so many different places we can dive in. Where do you want to start as we unpack this topic, Faisal?
Well, I want to get your take on this too. And you're an entrepreneur, you come from an entrepreneurial family, but at least one of the things that I've learned in the past 5 years or 6 years is the impact of long-term thinking and impact of not just looking at what are the challenges, issues to deal with now, what are the things to gain now, but what does that mean 5 years, 10 years out? For me, that has become more, and the more I go towards it, the more actually it has expanded. Now I'm thinking more 20 years out. Now I'm thinking longer. In fact, actually, the one interesting thing happened last year when I went to Florida. I don't know what happened. It was an opening happened or a realization happened when we were in the middle of our trip in our motorhome for 2 months. One of the nights I woke up, I do this often. Every once in a while, I'll wake up at like 2 in the morning and I can't stop writing. So I didn't know where to go. So I just literally went to the washroom and started writing. Because if I turned on the light anywhere else, my kids would wake up, my wife would wake up. So I locked myself in the washroom, and well, I didn't lock myself, but I went. That's a little bit dramatic. But I go in there and I start thinking about, and it was more flowing out of me. I literally created it felt like more of a plan for my whole life. And I'm not kidding. Like even my death, what my own death I was planning for, but it was just flowing out of me. Maybe because part of it is that I've been so focused on long term. Part of it is that we were trying different things, whatever the case was. But for some reason, once I kind of went through that in my mind, I felt like, you know what? I feel clear. I feel certain. I feel like whatever comes my way, this is what my life is going to be about. And that's what we want to talk about more, is that how are you thinking about your business? Are you thinking about the next 6 months, 3 months most of the time? And I'm not saying don't have short-term thinking, but are you planning for long term, whether that's related to your business, investments, lifestyle, the challenges you're dealing with? Do you get too focused on short term little challenges, or are you trying to solve bigger problems here? What's your take on that, Sher?
This has come up multiple times over the last couple of years in particular. And there's a framework used in business, and I don't remember off the top of my head who's the one that developed this framework a long time ago, but it's the urgent, important framework. So it's a box that has two axes. One axis has importance, the other one has urgent, and so you've got urgent and non-urgent, important and non-important, or unimportant, and so that creates two on each side creates four boxes. And it's interesting because then when we start to filter how we spend our time during the day, how much of our time is spent on the least valuable area, which is the things that are not really important and are not urgent. And the definition of important is not important today, but important in the grand scheme of things. And it's the urgent things that are like we get that frenetic energy that we must do now. And sometimes the urgency is legitimate, but also sometimes that urgency is coming from other people, and it's their urgency that is being forced upon us. And we can either accept their urgency or we don't have to. But being more aware and conscious of, are we focusing on things that are truly important? So for example, my husband and I, we just came home late last night, like after midnight, from a 5-day trip with our kids. And so we drove there. It took us 18 hours to get back. And so yesterday we were driving for a really long time. And we were having some conversations about business and about what we're doing and our, entrepreneurial life and that sort of thing. And we talked about a lot about our finances and how our business finances are flowing into each other and just different things like that. And one of the things that we realized, which isn't the first time we've realized this, but it's important, is that we don't come together and have these kinds of conversations often enough because they're not urgent. We can pay our bills, we can still do stuff. So like there's not necessarily an intense urgency around where are we at, where are the business at, budgets and are they falling in line with what we were projections and things like that. But it's probably one of the most important things that we could have a conversation about, because if we don't have a conversation about it, we don't keep track, we don't check in long term, who knows where we're going to be? Like, we are not going to have accountability to our own dreams, our own plans. So that's like a very concrete example of, in my opinion, of kind of yesterday. And I literally brought up to my husband, I'm like, this is an example of, doesn't feel like an urgent topic, but it's probably one of the most important things we could do it in our week. So I hope that kind of brings a little bit of, kind of teeth to an example around the important versus urgent.
Yeah, for sure. And what comes to my mind as you share this is reactionary versus intentional and conscious decisions.
Yeah.
And a lot of what we do is we react to the current, which feels urgent in the moment, but most problems resolve themselves short term if you have a longer term plan. And by the way, I want to take people back to like what is one of the most powerful skill sets generally as a human species we have is actually our ability to plan for long term. Like if you study enough history, you find out what made human civilizations grow was we stored grain. We didn't eat it. We actually gave people very little because we knew that there was famine that would come at some point. And it happened in Egyptian history. You look at it, they would purposely give minimally possible to help make people survive because they didn't have any other way of keeping the population going and helping them survive by giving them a minimal amount of grain so they can deal with the famine that's about to come. So there was yes, they were going to be hungry. Yes, they're going to be malnutrition, but it's better than dying completely, a whole population. But and it's the same thing goes with empire. So if you study the history of one of the things that built European empire. So if you study the 17, 18, 20, like let's go to 19th century, when the British Empire used to send these emissaries, they used to send them to India. This is before, no, I'm not talking, way around the 16th century, 16th, 17th century. This was happening all over Europe, but they were sending these emissaries around the time right before British came into India as well. They were sending them to like Mughal Empire, where this emissary would just sit there and observe with the trade paths what was happening. Like Mughal Empire was a huge empire. It was one of the most powerful empires there. Same thing they were doing with Ottoman empires and all these guys. So this emissary would just sit there and watch what would happen with trade routes, talk to people for years, and they would report back to the British Empire. At the time of, and they were not that powerful, and they gathered so much information on them, and they planned out so far ahead. When they came in, they knew everything, and they basically pitted a bunch of people against each other, a bunch of powerful empires against each other. All they did was use information and planning to take over that region. Their army was not that big, and this was a big shock where 100,000, no, was it around 100,000 soldiers could take over 3 million people. How did they do that? That was with a lot of planning. Now, I'm not saying they should have taken over. I'm not saying they should have created. That's not what I'm condoning, but I'm saying that the power was in the planning process. That also happened. This is why I think bigger companies are much better than individuals. What do? They spend a huge amount of their time looking at charts and data and planning, and they base every decision on data and planning. But what do individual coaches do? They sit there and they wake up, is like, what the hell am I supposed to do today?
Yeah.
What do I need to deal with right now? That's not how you build a business. That's not how you build a life. It takes a little bit of thinking, planning, and envisioning, and it takes long-term thinking to move you forward. So if you haven't done that work, start doing it. Start working on it, and start your day with not planning for the day, but having a plan that way before that. And that has worked for me personally.
When I first started my first business back in 2010, I created this big fancy business plan, and I presented it to a businessman that his job is to coach new businesses in kind of their business development. And so I brought it to him, and he helped me tweak it and helped me kind of fill in some of the gaps. And I don't see a lot of people do that in their businesses when I have conversations about a business plan. Like, what is your goal? How are you going to grow it? What are you going to do this year, next year, as you shift into different phases of business? Because what you do with marketing and different things like that looks different when you're a startup. When you're just starting, trying to get clients, that is probably going to look different than when you're a year or two in and you have some discretionary funds that you can reinvest back into your marketing expenses. So have you planned that out? I would say that's probably one of the most simple, not easy necessarily, but simple things that you can do to really solidify your coaching business. And when you are in days that you are discouraged and frustrated because you don't feel like it's going fast enough or you're not seeing the results, you can go back to it and do two things. One, make sure that you are on track. Are you actually doing the things that when you were not emotional, you planned out and said that this is probably what I'm going to need to be doing at this time? So that's one way of being able to use the business plan to kind of realign yourself back to what you should be doing or what you had decided you should be doing. Secondly, is it can help tie you back to the long-term vision, which is just what we were talking about. So your business plan can have like, what is your mission? What is ultimately your goal in all of this? And it can tie you back into that. So it taps you into the bigger vision, and it can also bring you back to, okay, the here and now, the urgency, where am I going to spend my time? What's the most valuable? So I would encourage every coach, if you don't have a business plan, Google it, ask ChatGPT, ask another coach, jump into our school community, ask us for guidance, I don't care what you do, but do something around making sure you have a business plan.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the first things that we do in our community when our pro members get started. One of the first sessions that we have is a 90-minute strategy session where I need to understand your plan. What is your long-term and plan for the next quarter? What are you going to focus on? And we also, in our group sessions, one of the things that we just talked about it yesterday, on Monday on our group session, where as you're making money, you're putting aside a certain amount of money for you to reinvest back into your business. It's not all for your lifestyle. Because you're building something for long term. Like just because you get 2 or 3 clients doesn't mean that you have a business. That means you reinvesting it to grow the actual business. It's common sense in most businesses, but for some reason it's not talked about enough in the coaching world. Have that in. But just a final point that connects to our next point around tracking your time. One final point is once you have a vision and a long-term plan, and this is the trap that every entrepreneur falls into because we are all interested in learning more. We all love novelty. We want to create something new. We all have that shiny penny syndrome of one kind or another, and we are attracted by all sorts of ideas and thoughts and everything. But once you build, and that's one of the biggest things that it has done for me is once I have my vision and long-term plan, nothing else matters outside of that. And I don't just mean for your business, I mean for your whole life. Like once you become clear about, hey, this is the path that I'm going on, this is what my next 5 years or 10 years are going to look like, you're purposely ignoring all the other opportunities, no matter how amazing they look like. And every opportunity looks amazing, especially when you're working hard, when you're struggling, when you can't make something work. The thing that looks amazing is the new thing that has a lot of potential.
Yeah.
But as Brendan Burchard might say, is like whenever you knock on the door of opportunity, don't be surprised that work answers. And to avoid work, a lot of times we go towards the new opportunity, or it just
Yeah.
looks more interesting. So the purpose of that is actually the long-term planning is for you to get focused and not get distracted by all sorts of other things. And that's also true for your lifestyle too, is like what matters to you. And then the next piece of it is tracking your time. And I'll give that to you, Sherry. How do you keep track of your time and what's the significance of it for you as an entrepreneur?
So this is definitely still a challenge for me. I live and die by my calendar, 100%, in that we kind of have a joke that if it's not in the calendar, it didn't happen. And I think that's an overflow from when I was working as a licensed psychologist. If it wasn't in your notes, it didn't happen. So if you're ever audited by, an ethical complaint or whatever, or insurance companies, you just had to make sure all the important things were in there. Otherwise, it's as if it didn't happen. And I feel that way about my calendar, that largely because it's just so chaotic. Life is so crazy and feels chaotic at times. I've got 4 teenagers and just lots of different things going on that if it's not on my calendar, I'm probably not going to remember to do it or to be there. So using my calendar is absolutely 100% critical. Like not even, it's a non-negotiable. And it's interesting because sometimes like my kids, I'm trying to train them how to use calendars, and I'm like, and because some of them have phones already, and I'm like, how do you live without like your work schedule and your calendar? Like that's living dangerously.
Yeah.
So, and I know, Faisal, that you have a much more robust calendaring system than I do. Quite frankly, I've tried a number of different third-party programs that will automatically adjust things. Like I can schedule, I guess I won't get into detail on that because I haven't landed on one that I absolutely love yet. But
Yeah.
there's lots of third-party programs that use AI to help streamline your calendar and different things like that. So I don't have the perfect answer for me yet, other than it's got to be on a calendar. And my husband and I share calendars, and I have an assistant, and she has our access to our calendar. And so sometimes I'll put things on his calendar, he'll put things on mine. So having that availability and that uh, between the calendars of people that matter in my life that I calendar things around, that is critical.
Yeah. Oh, I love and first of all, I really that you said that I have more of a robust system. I would say my system is probably simpler because I don't deal with as much as you deal with when it comes to 4 kids. And I would say your husband's calendar is probably simpler than yours, even though there's complexity between the
It
two
is.
because you're so I want to give you credit on that side because if I had to deal with all that stuff, then my calendar will look probably just as crazy. And I don't, so don't underestimate that part because that's a lot of work. And I watch my wife with 2 kids; she's goes crazy at times. But you have 4 kids that you've been raising, so that's huge. Plus, you're helping your husband. Plus, you're running your own business. That's amazing. I hope you give yourself credit on that side. My job is usually to just come here, do my work. I don't hear anything from inside, and my wife knows that to not even bring any issues unless it's big. Later on, after I'm done work, yes, I'm involved in that life, but that's part of the reason my calendar feels a little bit more stable, in that sense. But I feel like more, yes, AI and systems and programs can help, but more important than that is like I think foundational concepts, principles help more than system because systems have to be built on something.
Yeah.
I can give you an AI, but if you haven't done the thinking behind it, AI is not going to do the thinking for you. It can help you with that thinking, but it can't do the thinking itself. It has to start from some kind of value system, some kind of principle. And the way I look at it, and this is what I walk my clients through. So I'll give you an example. So one of my clients who's been an entrepreneur for the past 20 years, he does have a calendar, but it's kind of all over the place. So the first step is to have some kind of tracking system. So we're assuming that. And I would say many coaches I've met, I've sent them calendar invites. They don't know where it went. They, and when I asked him, like, and just to make sure that my system is working and they're getting notifications, they're like, well, I can't find them. Like, what are you looking? When I got on the call with them, what are you looking at? Well, I don't see the notifications in my email. Like, is it on your calendar? They don't know where that is. So what that tells me is that they don't have any kind of working system that they can look at and see. Otherwise, anybody who has a system, they'll be like, can you send me a calendar invite? I want to, like, that's the most usual thing anybody in business will, can you send me a calendar invite? I want to make sure it's on my calendar because they're intentional around that part. So the first thing is to have some kind of system, no matter how garbage it is. But going back to the principle, so when I was working with this client, he has a calendar, but it's all over the place. And he doesn't actually look at it. The only time he looks at it if there's a meeting on it. Like if there's a meeting on it, he will look at it. Outside of that, he doesn't put all the other things that happens in his life in it. Like, okay, so here's the challenge that I gave him. And I knew that the challenge stuff will resolve it because he was looking for better tools and system. Like, don't worry about tools and system. Here's what you're going to do. For the next month, I want you to put everything on your calendar, not just business stuff, not just meetings. I don't care if you take 2-3 hours to watch a show. I want you to put that in there. I don't care if you take 2 hours to be on TikTok. I want you to put it on there. Not to shame yourself, not to feel guilty about it, but just I want you to look at what's happening with your time. And that's the problem. We don't know what's actually happening with our time. So when I look at and I'll go into what you said before you were about to share, I think, and help me understand if that's a, I think what you were about to share is what adjustments you need to make in there. So once you understand what you do with your time, and here's what I told him to do. By the end of the day, you're going to look at that day. And if you had a 2-hour block for you to do some work and you spend half an hour on it, you're actually going to put half an hour and then the rest of it, you're going to put what you did on in that time. You're going to adjust your calendar. Now, whether you do it using AI or you manually, whatever, I do it manually. And I do the same thing at the end of the week. I look at my calendar. Where did my time go? What worked? What didn't work? What can I improve next week? And I think that process of just paying attention to data, what's happening, where your time is going, and what can you improve instead of what can you feel guilty about or shameful about. The big difference. And again, my calendar is not perfect. There are times like I can tell you, I'm looking at it right now. Yesterday, so I was supposed to do something, but I couldn't focus. So I ended up just doing some other extra things at the end of the day. This is part of the reason why I don't put important things at the end of the day because I have no energy to do it. So I ended up doing some other work here and there, and I put a color code on it. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I didn't feel productive, but I did something. But when I look at it at the end of the week, I can see, that day I did do some useful stuff, but I can see a bunch of small stuff that I could have done at any other time. I didn't need to do it at that time. And why didn't I have energy? It also gives you data to recognize your own pattern of energy. When do you work the best? This is part of the reason what my calendar shifted quite a bit. I don't work out too much in the morning because I waste a lot of time that I can use my mental energy to do that. Afternoon is usually my downtime, so I will work out a little bit better, more afternoon, because it gives me a little bit of energy. Again, it helps you understand yourself better too, your own energy better.
Yeah.
So do you have a tracking system, and have you actually spent time looking at it daily and weekly? And I think that honesty helps us understand what's happening with our time and whether or not there's value in the things that we're doing and spending time on. And I also mean personal life too. My personal life is on it. My vacation is on it. Every little thing that I do is on it. And I tell my clients that your calendar is a snapshot of your life. It's like, what is your life about? It should tell you that once you look at it. And the thing that's beautiful is visual. You can see it,
Yeah.
and you can tell what's going on. What are your thoughts about that, Sherry?
I totally love all that you said. It reminds me of a couple kind of philosophies. One is the behavioral principle that when we track things, we tend to naturally adjust our behavior, even if we're not trying to. There's
Hmm.
all sorts of research studies
Yeah.
around weight and tracking food. And even if you don't intend to adjust your food consumption and calories and whatever, we tend to because we track it and it's just hard not to kind of self-correct. And so let's apply that to our time. If we're more aware, tracking, and just have that more of that internal accountability, we're naturally going to start to be more effective with our time. That also does presuppose that we have a clear understanding of what is the most valuable things that we can do with our time, which goes back to having a business plan and having understandings of what we can do that's the most effective with our time right now, given the where our business is kind of in the long term. So I love that. And as you were talking, Faisal, about like your wife doesn't bother you until, I was like, oh my gosh, like my kids have been home. Of course, this is, we're finishing up with the summertime. My husband a lot of times is gone during the day, even though we both work from the house. We have another location we can work from, and he's just out doing stuff as a realtor, as a real estate investor, and I tend to be home more than he is. So like I've got French doors right over here, and like the kids will knock. They'll like poke their head in at any, asking stupid questions that I'm like, seriously, like, did you really need to ask? Or sometimes, important things. And so I'm constantly being interrupted every day. And last
Yeah.
year I had a kid at home schooling, and this year I'm going to have two kids at home schooling. And so having these like huge chunks of uninterrupted time, that feels like a luxury in my world. When I have those moments, like there, over the summer, there was 2 weeks where all of my kids were at like church camps. And I was like, it was amazing. It was like so quiet. It was amazing. But
Yeah.
so it's just like no matter so as you were talking, Faisal, about kind of protecting your time, I was just thinking, I'm like, that's not really part of my capabilities right now.
Yeah.
And so how I counteract that is I really work at prioritizing the things that I need to do during the day, so that when I am interrupted with a question or, hey, can you help me quick with this or whatever, when I come back, like I know what I was working on and what I am working on.
Yeah.
So really being able to track that well. And then the one last thing that what you were talking about reminded me of is anybody that's familiar with Dave Ramsey and Financial Peace University, which is a whole like budgeting financial system. He has a saying of something like every dollar needs to have a job, like every dollar needs to be budgeted
Oh, I
and
love that.
accounted for. Yeah.
Mm.
And I think you and I both see our time as that every minute of every day has a job. It has a purpose. And and certain parts of the time the purpose is spontaneity and connecting with family, but it's still a purpose. It's still like we have planned for that part of our life to be in this part of the day or this part of the week or whatever. And so that is, I would say, probably the biggest biggest philosophy I have around my time is I want every minute of every day to have a purpose. It doesn't mean that I'm filled it up with rigid activities with a start and stop time, but it's just an intentionality.
Yeah, and I love that you're bringing the human component to it. And this is what I was alluding to, is that everybody's situation is going to be different. Like my system will not work perfectly for you. Your system will not work for me. And you're dealing with kids who are going to interrupt you. I if I got that consistently, I would have to adjust my system dramatically.
Yeah.
It's like there's no way I can focus like that. But I mean, think about it. We can have so many variations of that. Somebody could be going through a death in the family. Somebody could have chronic pain, and the way they focus will be so different than somebody who doesn't.
Yeah.
And honor your own struggles in the process, or honor your own life circumstances. And this one of the things, even your clients will do this. They will read a book like, oh, I need to be rigid in this way. Like the person who wrote the book, he's giving general guidelines and principles. Doesn't mean everything will apply exactly that way, and they will try to follow it to the teeth. And at some point, and it's not sustainable. And they will even brag about it, do all sorts of things. But at some point, it breaks down, and they feel shameful about it.
Yeah.
No, you don't need to. You need to look at your own life, what your life is about, what are your responsibilities. I don't expect my wife to be that focused, and she's interrupted constantly. In fact, when I'm with her, one of the annoyances we have is that we can't finish two sentences without. So the thing we're looking forward to when we're going to the event in September, we're going alone without the kids. The thing we're looking forward to the most is just talking without interruption and just
Nice.
being. It's like one of the, like you said, luxuries of for us as little kids. So they're constantly asking about stuff. And while we're talking, they'll be like, so I can keep maintain my thought process. So Sarah gets really annoyed at times. She's like, I don't even remember what I was about to say, and it was important. One of the most normal things. So I don't expect her to be so focused or anything. I understand her situation, and she's half the time she's distracted because she has two kids that are constantly interrupting her thought process. If I had that, I'd be just as distracted at times. So again, look at your situation. What are you dealing with? What's your energy like? And that's self-awareness. Take account of your life. Don't compare it to other people, because you're not going to be like other people. Everybody has their own situation. And I think that awareness and just tracking the data will help you adjust and understand. And ultimately, it goes back to what we shared last. If you have a long-term plan, you will get it done. You will create the things that you want. It might take a little bit longer compared to the next person, and maybe you have other strengths that other people don't have that will come into play. We all have them. But as long as you're in the game, and the biggest thing with life or business is, as long as you're in the game, you will be successful. If you get out of the game, you're screwed.
Yeah.
Like if you can maintain your business, you will learn and you will become successful. But if you crash and burn, nothing will happen. So keep it, make your time tracking, make your life more sustainable rather than let me deal with this problem now. Let me work 100 hours or whatever long. Um, keep keep sustainability front of mind, which takes us to the next point, which is still around time tracking, but this is the thing that's very hard for many coaches. And then we're talking to coaches who are business owners as well. And business will require uncomfortable action. In fact, the most common thing in business is the only thing that grows a business is uncomfortable action. And that doesn't, it's not just when you're starting a business. At the past decade, I haven't had, every time I've stopped uncomfortable action, I can see I'm coasting and I'm not growing in my business. So when do you take uncomfortable action? What is uncomfortable action for you? For most coaches who are starting out, uncomfortable actions are actually going and putting themselves out there, making themselves visible as a coach, owning that identity and sharing. And that's very uncomfortable. I mean, I'm going through this with many of our clients, many of our members in our community, where they're, before doing a video or before posting, they're thinking about 100 different things, and I did too. It's like, let me get this perfect, make sure, like all these fears, once you get into it, none of those matter, because you're going to make mistakes. You're a human being, nobody cares about that. But those are real things. It's uncomfortable to put yourself out there with your hair being a certain way, or what you're going to say that's going to be a mistake. Before I was sharing about the that history, I completely screwed up the timeline on all this stuff, but I shared the concept at least. And I thought about it afterwards, like, oh, I completely messed it up. It was all over the place, the timeline. I don't think that's what happened. The timeline was off, but the concept and the story was real. whatever. I was trying to communicate. I make those mistakes all the time, but I need to become. The other uncomfortable thing is actually reaching out to people and booking calls, being okay with other people saying no, it's not for me right now. We had one of our members on the Monday call sharing that somebody posted something negative on one of his posts.
Mhm.
Oh, how do you know about coaching, or how long you haven't been doing coaching this long? Of course, that hit him personally. I'm like, you can't avoid that. That's reality. There's some people who are going to say stuff like that. So those are that. When are you doing that? And as you track your calendar, you can see that the times when you can do that is the times when you have the most amount of willpower and energy.
Yeah.
When is that? Usually for most people, that's the beginning of the day. And usually what most coaches do, the beginning of the day goes towards weird things like these morning routines that are elaborate. I did it too. So I know, like 2 to 3 hours. Let me do my meditation. It usually becomes, there's this one coach talks about it. It becomes like weird way to avoid the actual work. Do meditation, journaling, all that stuff is useful, but if it becomes a way to avoid the real work, which is go reach out to people,
Yeah.
then that becomes again avoidance. You're
Yeah.
not doing the real things. You're not being honest. Subconsciously, it looks like you're doing actual something real, but you're not. But if you spend maybe 30 minutes on your morning routine, but you actually did the work, you'll probably have more energy. You'll feel much better. So what is the uncomfortable thing you need to do as a coach? Daily, not just once a week or once a month, but daily. And that's what moves your business forward. Has that been real for you, Sherry?
I love the idea of what makes me uncomfortable and to do the thing. Um, yeah, absolutely. I do have a morning routine. And so mine starts at like 5. And so I'm done with it and showered and ready for the day and eaten and gotten my kids off to school by like 8. So going to the gym and doing all the things, it is like 3 hours. But I'm not going to be texting people at 5:30 in the morning, being like, "Hey, just following up with you," because that would be annoying for them, unless they're in a different time zone. So I do see where there have been days where my morning starts later than it typically does, and I feel like I've wasted time. So I do think that that perspective of being ready to work when you need to be ready to work is really important, and also highlights the difference. Like me exercising in the morning, it wakes my brain up, it gets my body going, and I know if I put it off towards the afternoon with the way my life is, it's not going to happen because I'm more tired.
Yeah.
And that's when all my kids come home from school and they've got all stuff going on, and the family life starts to whirlwind. So if I don't do it when everybody else is sleeping and the world is still sleeping, then it won't happen. So again, just want to highlight that be really aware of what your life is, what you need for
Yeah.
your body, for your mind, and for your relationships.
Yeah.
Super important. And for me right now, with the super uncomfortable thing is sales.
Yeah.
I have never really been, I shouldn't say never. I had probably about a 6-month period when I was like 20 where I was doing telemarketing. So super anonymous, calling hundreds of people a week, seeing if they would buy long distance. That's what I did. That was really about the only sales job I've ever had. Everything else was more customer service oriented. So jumping into coaching and what I'm doing now, and now having to really have those what feels like a difficult conversation because I'm not used to it, really has been the most productive event and kind of way of focusing on my growth. And the thing I've realized recently, and hopefully this is helpful for you as you're listening to this, the thing I've realized recently is that there's a few different things right now that I'm involved in that require me to have conversations to enroll people into something that costs money. Um, and the better I get at in one domain of doing that, of having these conversations about money, the better I feel and the more confident I am in the other areas where I'm asking for money, even if they're not in the same business. So that was a really cool insight that I realized recently. I'm like, oh, having money conversations here gives me more confidence to have money conversations here. So as you're thinking about your life and all the different things you're involved in, there is a generalizability of having these, challenging conversations or just things that you feel uncomfortable in doing. They will can generalize into other things. So that's cool, because if you think about it, you're like, do a little bit of work here and it makes everything a little
Yeah.
bit better.
Yeah, no, I really love that. And I love that we have such a contrast in our experience of how our life is, that you can see just with the two of us, our life is so different. And we need to approach it differently. Otherwise it doesn't work. And ultimately it comes down to whether you have a morning routine or evening routine, whatever it is, you're taking account of your resources, and time is probably your most important resource here. And what ends up happening is, and so for example, there are coaches who have very little time, like they don't have more than like 8 hours or 10 hours or something like that to spend on their business, and they will spend that valuable resource on something else, whether that's a morning routine. Morning routine can be adjusted, and for me it feels like a luxury to have a lot of time to have morning routine and other things. It's actually one of the things Alex Hormozi says. It really it hit me as well. It's like, there are people who talk about morning routines and they teach about it, but they forget how they got there. Because in the beginning, what they were actually doing was a lot of work. They weren't spending 3 hours doing morning routines or 4 hours. They have the luxury to do it, but they forgot how they got there. But people who are starting out, they might not have that luxury to spend their. I'm not saying not to have a morning routine, but have it according to your own, like take a stock of what you have. If you don't have it, do the best with what you have. If you have 3 hours in the morning, maybe half an hour can be for morning routine. The rest of it goes towards your business, because you
Yeah.
probably only have like 2 hours left. And when you do have time later, by all means, go nuts, go have 3 hour morning routines. And Sherry has established a couple of established businesses, and she can afford to do it. But many coaches I see, they're struggling financially. If you're struggling financially, get to work, because
Yeah.
that's what will make you money. And once you have enough of a surplus, you have the luxury to use time however you want to. And that was a struggle I had in the beginning too. And then the other side of it, again, I'm going to keep going back to it. This will come up with your clients as well. Stop giving people one answer to everything. And this is the power of coaching as well. You want to get people to come up answers based on their life, because their life is much more nuanced than you would think. And you can see it with us here. And let's go to the last two that we wanted to share around this. And the last two are really around a lot of times when coaches are doing this stuff, they're in their own little bubble of doing things. And they hope that everything that they're doing there amounts to something. But keep in mind that it takes months and years to build a business, not weeks. And at some point, it feels like a drag. And so what happens when you feel that drag, when you feel discouraged, when you feel disappointed in yourself, when you feel shame, when you feel guilt, when you can't get yourself to focus, when you're struggling financially, when you're struggling with your management, when you're struggling with your relationships? Who helps you with that? Well, if you don't have a network, a community, a set of mentors, coaches, colleagues, people who are helping you with that, you're likely gonna not make this a sustainable process. And one of the things that has made this sustainable for me, one of the areas why I devote a lot of my energies to be around people who are actually trying to grow. So and it sounds odd that for your time management, you need other people to keep you accountable. Yes, and it's not just like an official community for business. Community can be a lot of things. There are coaches that I see, they're just in their own little bubble. No, they don't interact with anybody. They barely they don't share what they're doing. But a lot of the reason why I do the things, and I literally shared this with a client of mine, is that because I have a wife and I have kids. I have to take care of them. I'm accountable to them. Like I'm responsible for them. I have business partners that I have to answer to a lot of times. I have team members. I have a reputation. I have credibility, and I have other community members that I share things to. And a lot of times, one of the best ways to do things is you declare it, you share it. One of the reasons why I share things a lot is that it gives me the courage to do it, because now I'm accountable to another person in the process. So do you have a community that encourages you? Do you have coaches? Do you have mentors? And maybe you don't have a lot of money and to invest, be part of a free community. We have that at least initially, or a very low tier community, or hire the coach that you can afford, as Rich Littman would say. But you need to have people that challenge you and push you. That's just in your nature. You're a human being. And a lot of the ideas around individuality in the West has given people the idea that you can do everything alone. I don't think that's a real thing.
Yeah.
I know that's a big for you. You're always around other people, Sherry. How has that shown up for you? Has that helped? I know there are both sides to it, but has that helped to
Yeah.
have coaches, people, colleagues that encourage you, keep you accountable?
It absolutely does. And I do think it's critical. And I don't think I realized how critical it was until maybe 5 to 7 years ago. And I think I heard someone kind of describe that community in three levels that I have kind of absorbed and adopted in how I think about things. And I think it's really important because if I'm missing one of these three levels, I can recognize that I'm missing that, and it feels there's an imbalance. And so the three levels are having somebody that is better, smarter, further down the road than me, whatever that looks like. So somebody that can mentor me. If I'm not around people that are further down the road than me, I start to lose, I
Hmm.
think I lose perspective on what's possible. I start to get complacent. And it's easy to think, oh, well, I'm kind of at the top of the game or whatever when I'm so not. And if I don't understand and see examples of the journey ahead of me and somebody that's willing to spend time feeding into me, I'm missing a piece. And because then what happens is one of the other levels is the people that are behind me in business that haven't been doing it as long, haven't had as much momentum, progress, success. And what I find for myself is I end up pouring more of my time into other people to help them move forward, but it depletes me because I'm not being poured into. So I've noticed that there's a balance for me that I need to be fed into by somebody that's ahead of me or above me so that I then can maintain my ability also to support people who are still on the earlier journeys. So those are two levels. And then the third one is to be around peers that are kind of equals, that are like relatively where you're at, that have a similar mindset, that maybe are in similar part of life, like family life, similar part of the business journey. These kinds of things, you can think about it you can think about it in your spiritual life. You can think about this in your financial life. You can think about this in your family life. You can think about this in your business life, like every domain of your life, health. If you're around too many people that are less advanced in your health journey, you are going to end up being like them. Again, research shows that, like in finances, if we're around people that make less than us, we will end up not advancing as much as if we're around people that are making more. Or weight, like if people are healthier, like we just tend to acclimate to who we're around. So I encourage you, as you're listening to this, be super intentional and audit your life. Do you have enough people that are better than you in all these areas so that it can sustain you as you're working with clients, as you're working with other people in your industry that you're trying to support? And do you have people that are right there with you, sharing similar struggles and challenges in the journey, that you can commiserate with, because they're right there too? I think all three of those levels are critical for a well-balanced, I guess, existence in life
Yeah.
where I'm contributing and kind of being fed into.
Yeah, no, I love that. And by the way, that's how human communities generally work, is there are always
Yes.
people you need to take care of. There are always people who are going to be your colleague. There are always people who are going to be ahead of you. Now, the thing with business is that it's a little bit compartmentalized. You need to seek out people. So you might not have people who are running businesses around you or this kind of business around you. So they can't relate to it. They can't share, and whatever they share might not be relevant. So you need to intentionally put yourself in a community, in a space where you're around those kind of people. It's part of the reason why I hire mentors and coaches to this day. Like after a decade, I'm hiring coaches who are ahead of me. We're hiring people for CMC that are working with us, who are giving us guidance. We don't just rely on just because we know something or theoretically we know something it'll work. We hire somebody who might know a little bit better, and then we put it to test. And the testing and tweaking is so much work for and Sherry knows this. Like we just with our with coaching master community, the past 2 years we've done so many pivots, so many adjustments, and some of them have worked, many of them have not worked, and we're still testing it. Same thing with my business. There's not much of a difference, and the biggest difference with my business is that I'm a little bit ahead with my business, so I've gotten a rhythm of it, and I'm pushing towards more growing it. It still feels like I'm at times I'm struggling, but again, like you said, when I sit down with my coach, I get perspective on, okay, what could my business look like? And he challenges me, pokes holes in what I'm doing and what I'm not doing, and how can I refine it and do it better. And literally, I got a message this morning from my coach saying, well, what are you doing with the strategy that we talked about? Are you implementing it? I'm like, yeah, it's with my team members. It's the time. Just that one statement makes a big difference. Like, okay, I'm on track. I'm going in the right direction. No matter what's happening, it's a positive growth. But if I didn't have that, I would get either complacent, like Sherry is saying, or what would happen is that I'm too afraid to push forward because I don't even know what on the other, because I don't have a frame of reference. I haven't been there.
Absolutely.
And that's really important. And the last one I want to talk a little bit about it, and specific, this is so specific to coaches. I actually learned this from Brennan Burchard. He said, and I didn't quite know what he really meant by this. He's like, every day, if you're going to be a world-class coach, if you're going to be a coach who makes this their path, spend every day, even if it's for 1 hour, being in the world of coaching. And that can take two forms. One is theory, the other one is practice. What he didn't specify was what to do. So I got involved much more in the theory part of it. So I got into learning about coaching, which was still good. I studied a lot how other coaches do things. I read books on coaching, those kind of things, still helpful. But what I would say is, if you're a coach, you have two identities. You're a business owner and you're a coach. The more comfortable identity is probably the coach when you're in private, and the more uncomfortable identity is probably a business owner if you've never ran businesses or this kind of business. So on the theory side, definitely read books on in the coaching world about marketing, also about marketing and sales. And those are the things that a lot of coaches will avoid. I did for the first few years. The more I got into it, the more I got better at the coaching world, and I understood. That's on the theory part. On the practice part, I love this, and I like, even if I go back every time, I think it was 3 years in or something, I made this commitment that I'm gonna coach every day. I don't care who I coach. I don't care if I'm coaching free or paid. Every day that I'm working, I'm gonna coach somebody. And I think to this day I've kept this, minus some when I'm at events or other things. Every day I have somebody that I'm serving. It has kept my head in the game, whether it's at a group level, one-on-one level, whether it's been free or paid. And it became more obvious to me when Rich Livin and Steve Chandler shared, especially Rich Livin, as he shared, he's like, he has two types of bookings on his calendar. There's red and there's blue. I think it was the red are those who are going to be potential clients that he's serving, and blue who are his current clients. Mine became green and blue. So green are usual those that I usually have green slots on my calendar. Those are people that I'm serving. They're not paying me, but they translate to blue for me later. But I show up exactly the same way for both of them. Why? Because my job is to serve people and coach people. And as long as I consistently do that, I'm in the game and I'm learning about coaching and business. That keeps me understanding where my time should go as a coach and as a business owner.
Yeah.
What are your
I love
thoughts, Sherry?
that. I love that. For me, it's slightly different because I do not coach full time.
Mm-hmm.
And so even just recently, I was kind of noticing, like, if I have 3 or 4 coaching sessions throughout the week, do I prefer them to be on all different days, or do I prefer them to be all on the same day? And I'm not sure if I've settled on one or the other. Because on one hand, having one each day, it I'm not taking advantage of time chunking where I'm, putting all the types of activities together
Mhm.
so that when my mind is in serving individually through coaching mode, or if I'm doing a group, in some respects, it like if I have just a day that I have devoted to coaching, like I'm all like my mind can simmer in that and I think be maybe a little bit more effective than if I'm like doing stuff and now I got a quick shift into a coaching hour.
Mhm.
For me, I think that I'm starting to realize that that's maybe a little bit less effective for me rather
Mhm.
than having a day that I try to put everybody into. So, so again, just a kind of a difference about how I function versus Faisal and kind of how our calendars look different. But this is something for you to be aware of. Which one is better for you? And I fundamentally agree with Faisal that even when I'm not formally coaching, if I'm not doing a group or an individual or whatever, there is still a way of being that is consistent with me being a coach. Me being a
Yeah.
coach really is more an outflow of the way that I function and the way that I am. And so even if I don't have a Zoom call with anybody, I'm still interacting with my teenage kids and having to use a lot of my coaching skills to
Yeah.
modulate my own emotional reactions to try to serve them best. So I love the idea of just being aware of our the areas in our life that we want to be intentional about that come out as coaching and where as a coach can we grow, and then just being aware of the way that life throws stuff at us that we
Mhm.
can do that even if it's not a formal client.
Yeah, I love that. What about the business side of things? Like, how do you operate as a business owner? Are you always, I know that you're always learning something about business. How does that
Yeah.
operate in your week to week?
I love the I think I'm naturally more inclined to the business side of coaching than the coaching because I'm just kind of thinking of the different personality types and I'm just super logical. I love data. And so and things and so for me like creating the business side is a little bit more fun. But and so knowing that I can spend a lot of time creating systems if I have nobody to run through my systems. So that's
Yeah.
something that I've had to dial back is like building out building the ship before you like building a cruise ship before you have anybody that's even bought a ticket for it. Like that is my tendency. So whichever side of the boat you're on, I think just being aware of that tendency of like, if you're all about people and you just want to talk, 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 because there's coaches like that we know that all they want to do is talk, 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 talk. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh crap, I don't know how to make money talking. Like that's a problem too. So I think it's really being aware of our own tendencies and where do we need to grow the most in order to balance everything out.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the patterns that's sticking out, like almost in every point, how our lives are so different and how our approach is so it's the same foundational concept, but how it
Yeah.
shows up in strategy is so different.
Yeah.
And if anything is obvious is take stock of your own life, and that's what we're doing ultimately as coaches. We're helping people become aware of their life. So, are you doing that work for yourself? Are you actually hiring coaches? Are you part of a network? Are you part of a community? Are you actually tracking your time, understanding where it's intentionally going? Are you actually making this a long-term effort for you to build this? Like those are like these are not like gimmicks and new things. These are foundational concepts that if you apply it long enough, it will create the output would be clients, business, lifestyle that matters to you. And that's not easy to build just on your own. You need to be part of something bigger. So take think about these areas and ask yourself, how can I apply these better for myself? And how can I help my clients with the same thing? Because the same challenges will come up for your clients. And a lot of times I see coaches who kind of dump their perspective on clients as if the same exact thing should work the same way with them. No, they don't have your life. They don't have your vision. They don't have your path. They don't have your purpose. There will be some alignment between the two of you, but explore more, find out what serves them, what helps them. And I think that makes you a better coach all around. But one last thing I want to share around the business part that you shared is, for me, I didn't love business in the beginning. I fell in love with business because I had to work in it, which is such a weird concept for me because I never got it in the beginning. But business became enjoyable as I understood what it's about a
Yeah.
little bit. And I'm still learning. I feel like it's in the beginning stages for me, but I fell in love with it because now it feels like, oh, it's a game that I can use to help a lot of people. Versus before, it's like, oh my God, I have to market myself, I have to sell, I have all that stuff. It's like now I'm usually excited to do all this stuff, even though I struggle through all the same things too. I'll leave it at that. We'd love to hear your thoughts, comments. Please share this with a coach, with a colleague, with a friend, anybody you got certified with, because I guarantee you they're dealing with all these things, even if they're not sharing it.
Absolutely.
I hope this helped you. We'd love to hear from you, whether you're in our community or listening to this live or afterwards on our YouTube channel or somewhere else. Please share your thoughts and comments. How do you create a better time management system for you? And what was the thing that stood out for you the most?
Yeah, I love that. So head over if you liked, if you're not part of our community yet, it's cmc.coach is the website. Head over there, then jump into our community and post what you loved or what you're going to do differently about your time management. Thank you so much for giving us your time and attention. We trust that this was valuable and something spoke to you. And we'll see you next week.